Here with us now, Republican strategist Malik Abdul and former Democratic legislator in Nassau County, New York, and host of the Josh Lafazan Show, Josh Lafazan. Gentlemen, good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning.
Thanks for having us.
Malik, I'll start with you. Trump is coming off what many would argue a very strong 6 months, but approval numbers, they're not that high. They don't reflect that. Why the disconnect?
Well, I think it's important to know that it's not just he's coming off of a high. I would argue that it is a historic high. The approval numbers at this point really isn't surprising when you consider how we really do live in a very divided country. Some of the initiatives that Trump has pushed, he's got a lot of pushback against it, not just from the recently passed Build Back Better bill, or is that his bill? No, it's a BBB. You know, I get that confused with Biden's BBB. And that's not a BBL, by the way, not for Sunday morning, of course. But I do think that it is an important thing for the administration to continue to actually push these type of initiatives, knowing that they're going to get pushback. The pushback against Medicaid, some of the pushback against all of the policy initiatives around the DOGE. I think all of those are factoring into Donald Trump's approval numbers. And if you look at where he is on immigration, even though people are generally still supportive of his effort to get illegal criminals out of the country, he has had some pushback against some of the raids that many of the ICE agents have been participating in. So I would expect that to be a factor in his poll numbers.
Yeah, we showed a Quinnipiac poll yesterday that reflected just that when it came to immigration. Josh, your reaction, why do you think there's a disconnect between what many call a successful 6 months, but that's not resonating with poll numbers?
Sure. Good morning. I think the reason there's a disconnect is because the country is already exhausted by the President Trump's second term, and it's only 6 months in. And if you look at where his numbers are faltering, it's because President Trump and Republicans in Congress are doing the exact opposite of what they said they were going to do. The big, beautiful budget bill, Trump says he's saving people's health care. 17 million people are getting kicked off health care. Republicans for 4 years said they were the party of maniacal focus on getting the federal debt under control. They just added $5 trillion to the deficit, the largest increase in presidential history. President Trump said he's the anti-war president. I'm going to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. It's been a little more than 24 hours, and he's authorized more airstrikes in 6 months than Biden did in 4 years. And of course, this is a stunning poll, Hannah. Only 3% of Americans think that Trump is handling the Epstein list correctly. That's lower than traffic on the Long Island Expressway. And so when you look at what Trump is doing and what Republicans in Congress are doing, it's the antithesis of what the American people were promised, and it's why his numbers are lower than any of his predecessors over the last 80 years.
I can attest, no one is a fan of the LIE, Josh. All right, so let's switch gears here. We have to talk about the economy. We know Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is in Japan today. We were talking to Hannah Brand a moment ago. He's hoping to secure a trade deal. Malik, how would you evaluate Trump's economic approach, especially when it comes to tariff policies? And it's safe to say we've seen a lot of whiplash when it comes to tariffs in this country.
Whiplash is a very good way to describe it. And many outlets have reported on the fact that the idea of tariffs as an economic mechanism has long been one of Donald Trump's priorities. And now that he's president of the United States, we have to keep in mind that a lot of the gloom and doom that people were predicting around the initial tariffs, what was that, April 1st or the April 2nd deadline that he gave, a lot of people, of course, in opposition to Donald Trump, we're talking about a lot of the long-term impacts. Well, we aren't seeing the short-term impacts of those tariffs at this point, and there are some more negotiations that he has to do. I think that the negotiations with China that may have been extended to April 12th, and there are a number of others. Even with the EU, what the Trump administration is looking at is about a 15 to 20% baseline tariff on the EU, similar to what he did with the UK, but the EU, of course, is pushing back against that. There are some other deals that he has in the pipeline, and Donald Trump has shown, despite a lot of the criticism that he's gotten, Donald Trump has shown some flexibility when it comes to the issue of tariffs, and I think that is by necessity. It's probably not something that he would have wanted to do, but out of necessity, because I think that the Trump administration is realizing, and hey, you say a lot of things during the campaign, you make a lot of promises, but once you get in office governing, that is a different story. So I think that the Trump administration is seeing, or at least trying to balance the thing that he promised versus what the realistic things that you can do when you're in office. And typically, that doesn't happen within 24
I
hours.
actually saw Josh nodding, which is very rare when I have Josh on a panel. Let's talk short-term impact.
Of course he is.
We love Malik, of course. Speaking short-term impact, Josh, what would you like for the president? What would you like to see the president do in the next few weeks to make Americans feel better about the economy and, of course, their wallets?
Sure, I'm nodding because the idea of whiplash, Malik, is absolutely accurate because Trump was for 135% tariff on China, then it's back down. He was for a 50% tariff on the European Union, it's back down. He was Liberation Day, we were tariffing every country on God's green earth, including the McDonald Islands, including those penguins. Then we backed out. And so, Henna, as you know, Trump is referred to on Wall Street as TACO, which stands for Trump always chickens out. Because if you look right now, and I was checking my notes, the tariffs before Liberation Day, when Trump held up that ridiculously big chart, are the same. They're the same now as they were before Liberation Day. And all we've done to the economy over the last couple of months is completely reduce faith in the American dollar, splinter our alliances, and foster antipathy in other countries. Travel from Canada, who's one of the largest drivers, about a 0.25% driver of the American tourism industry, are down. Foreign countries are boycotting American goods. So, Henna, what would I love to see Trump do over the next couple of weeks is I'd love to see him abandon the fallacy that tariffs are going to be so successful that it's going to replace the income tax. I'd love to see him get back to the economic position of Joe Biden, of investing in the American workforce, lowering taxes for Americans, and again, looking to the next generation of jobs rather than torpedoing the clean energy economy, reinvesting in a second infrastructure bill. There are things we could do that work. Tariffs for 50 years have not worked.
Guys, I am running out of time, but I want to get this next question in, if we can do it rapid fire style. You mentioned Joe Biden, Josh. As we mark Trump's 6 months, Monday will be 1 year, I can't believe that, since President Biden dropped out of the 2024 race. The DNC is taking a look at what went wrong. It's, and I love this New York Times article. They're calling it an autopsy. They will largely avoid looking at Biden's decisions to run, or, of course, key decisions made by Kamala Harris and her team. Josh, I'll start with you, and Malik, I'll get your reaction before I wrap this up. I would love your thoughts on those omissions that we're talking about. What would you hope to see in the next wave of Democratic leaders?
Yeah, it's funny. Democrats, I'm a proud Democrat, and the old phrase is I'm not a member of a registered, organized party. I'm a Democrat because we do a great job at finding ways to lose elections that we should win. And so in the next wave of Democratic leadership, a reminder that we have a 19% approval rating right now, I think there are 3 people we can look to. I think Gavin Newsom is somebody who is a guide star right now for Democrats in terms of fighting back. Democratic voters want to see their party fighting back against the MAGA playbook. So again, when Trump says we're going to withhold taxes from California, Newsom says 2 can play at that game. We give $80 billion more to Washington. We're going to withhold state taxes if you do so. Greg Abbott says we're going to gerrymander Texas to swing the House to the right. Newsom says 2 can play at that game. I think Pete Buttigieg's ability to communicate with voters who don't agree with us and his reframing of Democrats as the party of patriotism. And finally, Henna, Andy Beshear, who I think is the love child of Bill Clinton and Joe Biden, as somebody who can combine the empathy of Joe Biden and the folksiness of Clinton. I think those are 3 names to watch.
All right, Malik, very quickly, last word. What do the Republicans need to do to go forward, shore up their ranks up and down the ballot?
I think the Republicans are going to have to continue to focus on the kitchen table issues, the same issues that elected Donald Trump in 2024. They will exist in the midterm cycle next year. So I think that Republicans have to get in there, push back against a lot of the criticism that they're getting around the Medicaid cuts and a number of other things, but focus on the people, root out the noise. And fortunately, now that Elon Musk is gone, I think that that will give Donald Trump a bit of reprieve from a lot of the criticism that he got early on in the administration. But Republicans have to be on it. They have to listen to voters. And Donald Trump himself has to listen to his base and get his base out to vote.
This was a very fun conversation, a great way to get the Sunday morning started. Josh Lafazan, Malik Abdul, gentlemen, always appreciate it. Thank you again.